Okay, I was privileged to be a captain commanding G Troop of the 3rd Cavalry at Fort Myer, Virginia in 3940 when George Patton was our colonel. And we were all afraid of him, we lieutenants and captains, because he was such a wild man. But never occurred to any of us that he'd be a great battle captain. We just thought he was too wild. They wouldn't trust him with anything like that. But anyhow, he, one of the outstanding things, he used to visit us more than other regiments, and it always made the men sort of nervous, because they thought, well, tomorrow we're going to get stuck in a hard place. But when we were crossing the Moselle, I picked him up down at the 95th Division and brought him up to the 3rd Cavalry. And he gave them his blood and guts talk, which we'd heard before. It was up to standard. And so then I got in the Jeep with him. He said, how was that? And I said, oh, that's just great. That speech offended about 10% of the audience, I would say, because it was so profane. But anyway, he came up and I told him, I said, we are in the line, so I only got about 300 guys here to listen to you, sitting on a hillside. And so he came into the group and stood up in the Jeep and hit his boot with his riding crop. And he said, tomorrow we're going to make an assault crossing of the Moselle. He said, this is my old regiment. You sons of bitches know what to do. Now go do it. And he saluted the crowd and left. So that's what he gave us instead of the 2nd edition of Blood and Guts. Were you all there? Do you remember that?
I was not there. Raz, were you there?
No.
Maybe
No, I wasn't there.
Maybe I didn't invite you guys.
I didn't, well, it probably happened too quick. We couldn't have made it anyway, but I wasn't there. So I don't know about that.
But he was very fond of us.
I know him slightly when I was a teenager. He used to have a pack of foxhounds down near Marshall, Virginia. He used to come down. My father knew him. My father was retired military. And he was highly thought of down there.
Yeah.
Ran a good hunt.
Well, let me just throw out a little event that occurred. We had our 43rd Squadron headquarters in Beneberg, which is a little city 10 miles south of Luxembourg City. And we got in there late one afternoon, and early the next morning, General Patton surprised all of us, and he drove in to the headquarters area there, and they came in 3 Jeeps. And he was in the middle Jeep, and all 3 of the Jeep drivers were either five or six striped sergeants. And the guys that were sitting on the machine guns, you know, they had the 30 calibers, were either majors or lieutenant colonels. So we invited them for breakfast. They'd already eaten breakfast, but we invited them in, and they had coffee. And after we finished drinking coffee, John Patton wanted to see our operation map, and we went into the room where the operation map was posted, and he looked at it and he said, I've lost a goddamn Panzer division, and I want you to send patrols over there across the river tonight and find those sons of bitches. So we couldn't think of anything more appropriate to do than to send the patrols over, so we did, and they came back several hours later and did not find the Panzer division. And the humorous part of the story was the next day the Air Force found this Panzer division that was hidden in the woods somewhere, but it was about 100 miles up further north of us. And I remember when I got the word, I was relieved, because I figured if the Air Force had found that Panzer division across from me and we hadn't discovered them, then he'd probably have fired me.
Yeah, you would have been relieved.
I'd been relieved immediately, I'm sure. But fortunately, they were 100 miles north. That's the closest I ever got to General Patton during the war, and so he spent maybe 20, 30 minutes with us, and then he went on down to Thionville, and I offered to give him a platoon or my reserve platoon as an escort down to Diedenhofen, the German college, Theonville, and he said, no, I don't want anything. So he just took off in those 3 Jeeps. I don't know whether that road was clear or not, but he made it.
The only time he visited the 3rd headquarters was at Gmunden for our, what, 99th anniversary?
Yeah. Right. That was quite an occasion. I remember though, after the ceremony review, we had lunch, remember, up on a nice big patio at one of those fine houses. And after lunch, he told us, he was very entertaining and charming during luncheon. And then after lunch, he told us what the plan would be to drive the Soviets back to their own border. We were all horrified. We thought, God, you know, the war's over. And he gave us an objective. He's just going to deploy the thing.
His blood in your guts.
Yeah, that's right.
No vice versa. His
Yeah,
guts
right.
in your blood.
Yeah, right. That's it.
I was just going to relate an incident that happened during the combat period. As you recall, we made an end-one run around right end and up, coming up south from Paris, and we realized that we were going to be among the first, if not the first, American troops into Paris. So we were driving pretty hard to get into Paris, and suddenly we got a TWX, I guess they called it then. And anyway, we got a message to stop and stop in place until we received further orders. So, and we didn't know why, because we had been running hard and fast, trying to be the first Americans into Paris. But anyway, we pulled off the side of the road and waited, not knowing why we were there or what was happening. And about an hour later, here came the 2nd French Armored Division through us. And as I recall, their commander was a General Leclerc. Was that right, Jim?
Leclerc.
And and I don't mind telling you that I was terribly, terribly upset about that, because they were driving American tanks and in American uniforms and eating our food, burning our gasoline, and I guess shooting our ammunition. But they went into Paris, and so they got the honor of going to Paris. And so my squadron never got into Paris. We went east and crossed the Seine rivers at Milan, which is about 30, 40 miles south of Paris, as I recall. But I'll never forget that incident where we had to pull off the side of the road and let the 2nd French Armored Division beat us into the city.
Wasn't that Ernest Hemingway in the area at that time?
Yeah, but that was before we picked up him. We met him at Hemingway before that.
Well, the story is that it took them about 4 days to get that division back together again after they got in.
Oh, they got in Paris?
They just parked their tanks in their houses and all around.
I don't doubt that. I would imagine that the champagne was flowing so fast that probably some of those French soldiers got lost. Forgot to find their way back to their headquarters.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
I'm afraid I did too much talking. I wish you'd get more talking out of the general.
Well, I'm going to talk to the general yet, so...
Okay.